This is the Educational Triage Podcast. Welcome. We invite you to come along with us on an exploration of interviews, issues, and other exciting and relevant topics in education, especially alternative education. They say alternative education is a laboratory for mainstream education. Why? Well, join us every week and listen in as Philip Summers
Aloha.
and I, Tony Hunt, jump in feet first to discuss issues that may affect our classes, students, communities, as well as our teaching. Please subscribe if you enjoy and find relevance in what you experience here. And if you haven't left a quick review, please do. We appreciate your candor and insights so we can improve as we move forward. Now, let's see what's on board today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Educational Triage. This is Tony and I'm joined this week, of course, with the indomitable and lovely, beautiful, gorgeous, hairless Philip Summers.
Aloha. I have hair.
Yeah, on your face. Anyway, this week we're talking about professional development and doing professional development. How do you do professional development? Or how does it do, or how does it do you? Yeah.
Pro dev. I try to call it pro dev and being a kind of a masculine pro dev sort of thing. And I was working with a lot of women. They all looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, okay. Professional development.
Well, let me read this article. And one thing I want to let our listeners know is that we're going to start doing something different after the first of the year.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take Christmas week off, and we'll be back on New Year's Day. But there's a couple of things, and I have to admit, I have been very lax in the blogging scheme on the webpage, and I believe that there might be one or two blogs up there, and I have been very, very bad. And since my medical problems and issues that came up, I've had to really spend most of my time and energy with that. So beginning this week with this episode, the blogs will start happening, and also we will start having a better presence on social media as well so that you can see that. And then I am also going to be working on giving us a video platform
Where I will prove I have no hair on my back.
No. No, please, no. No.
I will not do such.
No.
In fact, if you ever, I always was freaking out about the fact of doing video because I fidget a lot, and then I would have to behave.
You do.
I do. I'm a big fidgeter.
But I don't think that'll put anybody off. But before we even get going on professional development, I want to throw this one article out. I just received my Education Week issue today because I didn't pick up the mail yesterday. And there was this article in there, and I thought that I would go over it, and I think it feeds directly into what we're going to be talking about today. So it's called "The Status of the Teaching Profession Has Hit a 50-Year Low. Can it be turned around?" So let me just read it to you really quickly. Who wants to be a teacher? The silence may be resounding. Based on a study that came out last week, the status of the profession is at its lowest point in 5 decades. Researchers at Brown University and the University at Albany compiled and analyzed decades worth of national data from more than a dozen sources about factors like teachers' morale, the perceived prestige of the profession, and interest in entering the field to create an annual profile of the profession between 1970 and 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So that's 52 years.
52.
Mm-hmm. What they found suggests that the pandemic only exacerbated the decline in prestige and attractiveness of teaching. When you look at the data that we have, it's hard to see us in a spot anywhere else than a really critical tipping point in public education. said Matthew Kraft, an associate professor of education and economics at Brown and co-author of the report. For the study, the researchers pulled from dozens of data sources, federal databases, long-standing annual surveys, more recent nationally representative polls among them. Their key takeaways: only 42% of educators say the stress of their job is worth it, compared with 81% in the 70s. Interest in the field among high school seniors and college freshmen has dropped 50% since the 1990s. The number of new entrants into teaching has decreased by 1/3 over the past decade alone, and just 59% of respondents to a nationally representative survey of the public say the job has at least considerable prestige this year, compared with 78 in 1998. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, wow.
Why has all this occurred? Declining wages, a competitive outside labor market, the decreasing influence of teachers' unions, a rise in school shootings, strenuous reform efforts, and low education funding levels are likely culprits, the study says. The researchers believe that can be turned around because that has happened in the past. I guess we've
Who
hit
said
this.
that? Who said that?
The researchers.
The researchers said that. Are the
Yes.
researchers average age? What?
70?
Because what's happened in the past? That's good. Yeah, I mean,
Higher
yeah.
wages and more professional autonomy could be a start, they believe. And I like that word, professional autonomy. That's going to
Oh,
be a key. That's going to be something key with today's topic. Other
really?
issues still need to be addressed, though, such as modulating the divisive debates that have undercut the long-standing notion that educators are allies to children's learning rather than barriers, and stemming the rise in violence in schools.
I can only think of that phrase that I can only think of when I only think of this phrase. What about the kids? What's best for the kids? Are we thinking about the students?
Well,
And
here's
yeah,
well, you're talking about the people that are the frontline workers that are working with the kids.
right, the teachers. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
what are they thinking? And they're not happy. And I
Well,
usually think about that fact that, was it worth their while to go through the stresses? And 81% of them said, yeah, it was because they were doing what they thought was best for the kids. And if
but only
40%
40.
are saying that now,
Yeah.
I think they're not thinking it's best for the kids.
Well, I think those
Yeah.
people are keeping in mind what's going on with the kids. The problem
Yeah.
is that there are so many other forces that are coming down. You
Yeah.
have the administration that's telling them that they have to be doing X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
They're being scrutinized over every little thing. Their autonomy has been taken away.
Yeah. Their autonomy is being taken away. They
They're
can't
no longer,
adjust.
well, I think
They can't create.
you're not allowed to be innovative.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't.
You can't innovate. You can't create. You
And
can't
so,
adjust. You can't, year to year. If, say, ask any elementary school teacher, hey, fourth grade teacher, is this a different fourth grade class from last year's? Absolutely. And you could do different things from different years.
mhm,
Just you're
mhm.
absolutely right.
Yeah, then it seems as though they want to go lockstep. So let's
Yeah.
let's
Like
go
on
into
same
our
page, same day.
right.
Go.
So let's go into our topic, because
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I think this is a wonderful kind of lead in that we have. So the
Uh-huh.
purpose of professional development in your eyes,
Uh-huh.
great and wise sage.
Oh no, you're the wise one because you just set the stage and granted the segue. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yes, because I can feel my thoughts. Yeah, you're right.
but what is the purpose of professional development?
Ask, who are you asking? Of
I'm asking
course.
you. Well, I'm
Well,
asking all of our listeners, but I'm also
yeah.
asking you.
Well, I
So,
would say that I preferably would be a collaboration and team building sort of effort within a certain group of educators, teachers, directed toward the welfare of the students and the welfare of the teachers themselves. And whatever it is that you're going to develop, I think if you're looking at the administrators, they're looking at developing along the lines of curriculum kind of in a structured lockstep-ish sort of way, or how many of the professional development things ended up like psyop, or this year
So,
we're going to do it a certain way. We're going to learn this particular way of teaching. We want you to do it this way. We're going to do these evaluations at the 6, 10, and 12 week or 14 week intervals, and we want to assess these behaviors of the kids or something. Or, you know what I'm saying? They always want to institute something. And I think professional development really should be more of a collaborative innovation sort of team building thing amongst the curriculum or amongst the teachers to really develop curriculum in a ground up way.
well, I don't think that the kids can learn positively unless the teachers are there feeling, one, empowered, two, innovated, and
Right.
three, absolutely excited to be able to do what they do. And
Yeah.
they also need to be supported as well. And
Yeah.
so I mean, what kid wants to look at gray macaroni and cheese for dinner? I don't think they're going to eat it. All right.
No. We came up with the greatest ideas, the greatest structures. Just the
So,
ways to deal with these kids.
so the whole idea is professional development is for professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that they see it right now is every state requires clock hours. You have to have so many professional development clock hours in order to renew your license every 3 to 5 years or whatever each state wants. And that may vary from state to state. Here in Oregon, I believe it's 120. And so if you're taking a college course, that takes care every 3 hours, I think gives you something like 20. I don't remember what it is. It's like 18 hours or
Yeah.
they have their own their own formulas for fulfilling that. And so what districts that we have around here and others that I've spoken to around the country, they do in-house professional development that the administrators, they bring in teachers, but those teachers are basically almost like they're toadies. And so it's the same teachers over and over again.
Yeah. Kind
And
of.
so they kind of, let's just say that they're kind of like high off the armpit of the administrator who has their arm around them. And they just agree to everything and they feel very empowered with that. But the rest of the teachers don't.
When I first started my career, I thought they were administrators. They had offices up there. They were administrators who just came down and taught us stuff and got back up. I did. So.
Huh. And so,
Toasters.
and the administrators, when was the last time that they actually had to do a teaching professional development?
There was a couple that they were a little bit better than others when it came to doing a sort of a short-term thing, but they were generally more political and more glad handy than were more rolling up the sleeves,
Right.
getting glue under their nails kind of thing.
Yeah, there was more of an ego that went along with it.
There always was a little bit of that. There was always, I wasn't sure if they were smiling that well, that long because they were that happy or they were the soup or something like that. Yeah.
Well, when you're in the theater,
Yeah.
you put Vaseline on your teeth.
I did not know that.
It helps you smile.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Of course, I was in the theater, but I was always on the stage and detached from I didn't never know. And I was very cheerful.
But okay. But professional development is there for teachers to feel empowered and to learn, because teachers should be showing lifelong learning, because that's what we're trying to teach.
That's what
and we need to be models of that. Yeah. And we're learning new and innovative ways of structuring our classes, of using the materials, of reaching students and doing better by the students so that they can be more successful and we have more opportunities and more ways to do it. That would be like if we're learning how to do universal design for learning, if we're learning how to do differentiated curriculum, if we're doing multiple intelligences, if we're doing any any number of ways.
Yeah.
And so, but it's also a way for you to be able to reach out and to be collegial, maybe not
Yes.
with people that you normally work with, but with other people. And so I'm going to go back about 30 years to when I was teaching elsewhere, not with you. It's before I worked with you. And even
Hmm.
before that, we went to conferences, and conferences were structured around teachers. And we would do this. And there was a state in service day, and they would have they would, not a teacher, not teacher conferences in the way that student teacher conferences, but they would have like the Council for Teachers of English. They would have the Science Teachers Conference. They would have conferences for everybody. And
Hmm.
so it was a statewide day off. And then what happened was districts started realizing that people were taking advantage and they weren't going. They were saying that they were going, but they didn't go. And they were upset because you were supposed to be going. It was a paid day. And so then you had to come back and show that you actually went if you didn't, because now they're using substitutes. And if you can't prove it, then you get a slap on the, I don't know what happened to them. But you see people, you reconnect with people, you
Hmm.
ask people what they're doing, you're able to collaborate, you're able to, it's exciting. It
I had an
really is
experience like
exciting.
that. The conference, it was an alternative ed conference.
Mhm.
It wasn't the same thing, but it was a focused
Right.
where you saw people from around the state. It was
Right.
nice.
Right. And
Yeah.
so
Focused
even
curriculum, things
right, and that was the one that we had in Oregon was on the
like that. Hmm.
same weekend.
Yeah, yeah. Is
And
that it?
so
I
and
didn't. I knew that there were other people were doing that. I didn't realize that it had established itself that way.
yeah, and
Okay.
so well, I used to go to the English one, and then
Yeah.
when I joined the Oregon Council of Teachers of English, I started going to that one, and I kept bumping into people that I had worked with in the past, and it was wonderful. And
Okay.
and we could talk about different things, and we would sit down and we would brainstorm, and then we would go out for drinks, or else we would meet up at another time and just kind of work with each other on
Right.
things.
I got a
Um,
ton of ideas from the alternative ed conference. Actually, sold a curriculum unit. Sold like 8 copies of my curriculum unit there.
oh wow,
Yeah, the people were very
wow!
intrigued by it. So yeah, really great
People
stuff.
people love curriculum because I think I gave
Yeah.
away something like 85 copies of my curriculum because
Oh,
I did workshops on them and I had to add them on because they wanted them. But there's a story attached to that that I'm not
yeah.
going to go into
People
today.
love to go look at. Oh, they got great stuff there, and they'll say, "I can I." Yeah. And
Yeah,
mine was really developed, so I'd sold copies of it. So,
and this is before we were really into. I mean, computers were pretty new at that time, so
yeah, I
I
had a
think we
way
were
of
still
using them
using
too.
dot matrix.
I had a way of using the internet, communicating with climbers on Everest and stuff. So
Yeah,
people were into that. They had no
right.
idea. And yeah, it
Right.
was a lot of fun.
So professional development is just that. And it's used throughout business, it's used throughout
Mhm.
other professions. Attorneys have to do it, business people have to do it because they have to keep
Doctors.
right, because
And,
they need to maintain their
but
licensure.
they golf around. No.
Well,
They golf around there, which is not too far out.
yeah, we don't get
One of
to
the
do
ones I
that.
liked though is when I was collaborating with that team, and my mentors and I, we had these weekly meetings, and we did case management, but we also did um, staff meetings, and we talked. Our structure and our ideas came from those meetings,
Mhm.
and those were basically professional development. I used them for those hours, and they just blew
Right,
away my hours. I had them all by a semester and a half, 1 year, and
right.
but they were wonderful, and that's the collaborative sort of innovative
Mhm.
type we were talking about. And we even had our administrator at the time come in and lead like a whole yearly thing on like one book, Who Moved My Cheese 1 year. But that was a valuable text at the time. A lot of people didn't understand that they were sort of locked into behaviors, and we had
Mhm.
a good time talking about it on a regular
I think
basis.
the best book that she gave us though was The Primal Teen.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And the time she talked about the culture of poverty, I learned a lot
Hmm.
about the culture of
Yeah,
poverty.
Ruby Payne.
Yes. Yeah, it helped me understand the students and why they value relationships over money, even.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh huh.
Hmm.
Yeah. But for
Amazing.
those of you at home, there's lots to learn by talking to each other. Yeah.
Because sometimes things become latent, and we
Yeah.
don't, and they kind of get covered with a lot of dust. And then you
Phew.
start talking to somebody, and all of a sudden you realize, whoa, I've got that way back here, and it's trying to shake itself off, and then it's refreshed, and then you have that again because you
Yeah.
already knew that. And so that's always wonderful.
For example, the standards, as they became more and more important, let my um, knowledge of race studies and Black studies became less and less important, to the point where nobody even knew I knew anything about it
Hmm.
until kaboom, it all
Right,
blows up.
right.
And it's like, share your knowledge with people, or be willing to listen to people when they share theirs with you. We all know a lot, and it's all very pertinent. So,
Hmm. Oh, definitely. So the purpose of professional development is to get people out there rethinking what they're doing, being more self
yeah,
aware,
yeah.
and understanding that there are other ways to do it and figuring out ways to do that, as well as to collaborate and to
Making it more relevant.
reassess and reuse. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We live in this moment, and these moments are changing rather quickly.
right. And how do you plug the kids in there?
Yeah. How do you plug the kids in there? So when they
So,
talk about this is what they're talking about. Don't say
mhm.
tic tac when it's TikTok.
so
Yeah.
So, who decides what's on the agenda for the professional development, though? Because if you're doing it in house and on campus,
Right.
who, because where I was working, it came from the district office. And then they told everybody else what they were going to do.
Mm.
And then they figured out a variation of how to get that stuff done. So, and there was some wiggle room. There were times for teachers to really show off what it was that they did. The problem is that they did not allow other teachers to do things simply because A, they didn't fall into the right clique, or they didn't feel as though that they deserved it.
Yeah. They did that.
So yeah.
Because I presented something that I wanted to actually try to include, at least on a micro level. And then if that was successful on a larger level,
Hmm.
and they looked at me cross-eyed and went, thank you for coming. And I never heard nothing. And I had it very much planned out. And I pretty much found out that they were going, yeah, who was that guy? That was the craziest thing I ever heard in my life. And I realized that I was not part of the in crowd at all. And they just said, yeah, I gave him his 30 minutes. And boy, am I glad he's gone. It was very strange. I had no chance
Wow.
whatsoever. I was never one of the in crowd.
Hmm.
It was a good idea. And I still think it's a good idea. But yeah, because I wanted to try it with a small group of people, the kids who I was working with, because boy, do they need an outlet for their energy and
Hmm.
things like that. And I had a good sound basis of research and a good plan and things like that. But they, like you said, they're getting their orders from some meta place, some pet source, and I think it comes from more and more of a bigger source all the time. I'm not sure, but
I'm not sure that it comes from anywhere except for central
yeah,
office.
there's some central office somewhere that prints bigger books or something. They're very polished. It just
Who
seems
knows?
like it doesn't have any personality or relevance. It's sort
Well,
of I try to find the relevance, but it doesn't seem to have meat.
well,
I don't know.
Well, here's the next question, and that is if we are professionals, why are we being infantilized in many ways and treated as though we were students?
Thank you.
Because now
Okay.
they expect us to be using these things in the classes, and we have to demonstrate how we're doing that so they can assess and give us a grade, in a sense, on how we are doing these things.
Thank you. yeah, I kind of thought that I could put some of my personal flair in something, and I delivered it, and then I was critiqued by a professional critiquer of this curriculum, and they sort of toasted me. And I looked at him and I thought, "Excuse me, how much experience do you have teaching? I know you know the curriculum there, but if I didn't deliver it the way it should have been delivered for you, what makes me a failure at delivering this?"
Hmm.
I was like, "Hold on here. Yeah, I didn't do it your way, but there are students present." It's like, it was weird. I was meeting one standard that didn't seem to be realistic.
See, back in the late 80s, I was trained in ITIP,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Madeline Hunter. And
Yeah.
I had one or two, I think it was a 2 day training, maybe it was three, I don't remember.
Yeah.
And they, I, I had just taken on a job. And so I was trying to do all these things. And I was trying to find, I had other staff members in the department because it was a mid year replacement.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I wasn't given the materials. I had to figure out where all the materials were and
Holy
what I
cow.
could use. And all of a sudden I realized I need a book. And so I talked to my department chair and they said, yeah, you got to go find a book. And I said, where are the books? And they said, well, these people have them. And I said, okay, fine. So I went in to talk to these people. I went in and I talked to this one teacher and they said, sure, nobody's using this book. So go ahead and use it. So I went in and I got the book and then the period before. And so we did ITIP in the middle and I'm doing this book. And I had a teacher come into my classroom demanding that I hand her all copies of that book because I overset my boundaries because I did not come and talk to her about using that book.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, well, I was supposed to know that you were going to use it. How?
Huh? Okay.
And she said, everybody knows. And I said, well, nobody knew. And she said, well, you failed to come and talk to me. And I said, I got better things to do than to figure out. And anyway,
Invisible rules.
yeah, exactly. And then the next thing I know, this woman shows up in my
Hmm.
room. And I said, can I help you? And she goes, yeah, I'm here to evaluate you for your ITIP.
Without the book.
And I said, scheiße.
She's like
This was
German.
another woman. This was another woman, the trainer.
Saying
And I'm
nerd.
like,
At least you get said
I said,
nerd.
is that today? And she said, yeah. And I thought, oh, great. It was just one of those weeks, you have all
Uh
these things that just kind of make the perfect storm. So anyway, I didn't do very well on my assessment. And she looked at me and she said, now, what do you think you could do better? And I said, not worry about whatever it is that you want me to do. I said, because I can tell you what those kids learned simply by watching them. Because
hmm
these kids have developing minds, because it was middle school.
Oh dear. Yeah, you can totally tell
I,
that.
I said, I can tell what these kids are learning. And the kids are actually very well behaved for the most part in these classes. And they're getting it and they're understanding. Well, you're not following the proper form. And I said, I don't care.
Middle schoolers aren't proper humans.
So so my name became a little muddish or
Yeah.
brackish after that. But
For
yeah,
all the
so
right reasons, for all the correct
mhm.
reasons. It's
but
what are you going to do?
but going back to who chooses the agenda for these things, it's like it's are these things that we really must have? Are they things that we're supposed to? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know because I get more from going to a conference. I get more from speaking to people outside and being in alternative ed. You don't really get the same kind of camaraderie or collegiality that you would if you were just another person in another department.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, you don't.
you want to talk to other people outside. And sure, yeah, you do have pals that are um, peppered through the building if you're in a building or in a district, but you got to get off campus. You got to get out of that building. You got to be able to spread your wings and breathe some fresh air into your lungs in order to be able to figure out what it is that you're missing, things that you need validation, you need to have inspiration, and you need to have the innovation.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not extremely wise, but I know I can connect with kids, and I know when I'm not, and I know when I am, and I know how to adjust. And I know when I'm being evaluated by an outsider who's a teacher and then they don't know what they're talking about as far as putting the kid in the equation. They're judging me on their standards and I'm not meeting their standards, but the kids and I are getting along great.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look to them and I upset them when I say, why are you, I'm not the least bit concerned that I'm not pleasing you. I'm not here for you. I'm here for the kids and the kids only. And I think I've met more and more educators in latter years who were extremely upset by the fact that I said that.
Well,
They,
there's a narcissism because they feel as though that they've achieved a level of in the hierarchical order that they should have power
perhaps,
and
but
that you need to genuflect.
I learned from my mentors. They taught me well. I hope to
Mm-hmm.
pass on that knowledge to some of these people who thought that they were above me, I guess. But I thought, no, because I know my success lies in the kids and I'm watching the success.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've watched it fail too, but I know
Right.
it's successful and I know, yeah, I could pass this on, but you just want to judge me. And it's about the kids. It's really, and that's what gets me, when it's like they want to assess the professional development, the scale, from bad to good seems to always go to the patent. Here we go, we're going to do this by this step, and it doesn't have any soul and you don't really know why you're doing it. Must be somebody's pet project. To that really meaningful meetings that you have with your colleagues where you come up with this really great curriculum and you get together and you do it,
Mm-hmm.
and it just like it clicks. It has a few bugs in it for next year you'll figure out, but it's like, yeah, let's do this every year.
But
That kind of
it's really good for the kids to see the failure.
they see those things fail and they don't
Be-
even know they're failures really.
well, I always tell the kids, well, that didn't work, so let's rework it and let's see what does work. And
Yeah,
the kids will cheer you on and they'll work with it and go,
yeah.
nah, this is another dead dog.
You always
And
get to
they
the end of it.
yeah. Yeah, you do.
You just
But
get to the end of it better next year and the year before that, or
but
after
the
that.
more you can teach failure to the kids, that
Yeah,
failure is not a bad thing, that you just regroup and you keep going.
for sure.
That is one of the key components in brain plasticity, especially with neuroplasticity.
And always keeping the
Because
kids involved in it too,
exactly,
because it can
exactly.
change radically, from year one to year three to, yeah, big time.
Oh,
Just by
definitely.
kids, like I was saying earlier, and we know that the population of kids will force you to change really quick if
So
you're watching it, if you're paying attention.
so with all that we've talked about so far, do you think that the purpose is to I hate to say it, but do you think that there is a drive to make
Mm.
sure that teachers are towing the line and that they don't get out of step and that they are doing things because we remember months and months ago when we first started the podcast we were talking about compliance and
Mhm.
how schools basically lock kids into learning how to comply
Yeah,
and to fall into lockstep. Now it seems as though it's moved on to the teachers and the
right.
teaching staff, but they want them to do the same thing. So in a sense, teachers are being treated not as professionals, but even below paraprofessionals, that we don't know our shiz and that we need to learn from the people who, in my opinion, there's some very good ones. Don't get me wrong. But for the most part, some of them have attained their Peter principle. And it's a good thing they're not teaching because they would have sucked.
Yeah, yeah,
But we need to have teaching administrators, people who don't believe that who are not like what you're describing. We need people who are willing to get their feet dirty, get their hands dirty, jump in, and they're not afraid of the kids, that they can talk to the kids and not go on a power trip because of their own insecurities.
Teach. I was just the thought was I was crossing my mind. How do you get collaboration at the very base level with the students or with the teachers? How do you get teachers to learn? Because that's what the basis of teaching is: learning, teaching. It's this reciprocal, circular thing. And so teach just what you like outside of your subject. Some kind of colleague college.
Something that piques your interest.
I was thinking of the phrase attraction rather than promotion. All the best things that we do are rather we're attracted to them. You
Mhm.
know, we get promoted all kinds of stuff, but the best things in life are through attraction rather than promotion. We
Right.
find them. We don't sort of get them promoted to us. And so when someone talks about one of the things they're passionate about, fly fishing or rock climbing or cycling
Mhm.
or piano, and they're really passionate about it. When you see them explain that or teach it, that passion translates. And if for the half an hour, 45 minutes they're talking about it, you're still enraptured in their talk. However, for a few, you're also inspired in a certain way because you relate to it. It has a way of spreading. And
Mhm.
that is just through the expertise and joy that you feel in that thing that you do so well. And we all feel that. And so when you go through that college of teaching your colleagues something that you do other than your teaching and you
Mhm.
do it well, it does inspire them in a certain way, very much so sometimes, but even a little bit, if not interest them and let them know who you are. And I know that I get ideas all over the place and then they expand into curriculum all the time. Or I say, hey, I can ask that person to come talk to my class.
Mhm.
That's fascinating. We're just doing that thing about fly fishing in Montana. I did not know. She does that. Can she come talk to my class? Things like that.
Hey,
I know I've got a bona fide fly fisherman.
I had kids that were into fishing and fly fishing,
Yeah.
and one of my friends at the time just happened to be the editor for the largest publication of fishing magazines, journals, and books in the Western
Wow.
Hemisphere. So she came in and she talked and she brought in boxes and boxes and boxes of books. Well, there were so many of those boxes of
Wow.
books that there were more than double of everything. And my mother's next door neighbor was an avid fly fisherman. So I put a bunch of them together and I took them to him and he said, "Oh my God, you just saved me hundreds of dollars." He said, "Because some of these I have been I'm planning on buying them one a month so I can get through them."
Oh,
But
wow.
it's true
Yes.
because you can learn so much just by talking to people and finding out. The other thing is you figure out, because every time that I do curriculum, I always look at the kids.
Yeah.
And I remember I began by teaching French, I think it was. And so the kids were learning French, but it was lackluster. They just weren't into it. Then we did Spanish. I thought we could go a little bit further with that. Same thing as with the French. I took in, oh, I took in Latin, and the book I was teaching out of was master's level. We're talking the degree masters, because
Jeez.
it's what the master's students at Emory University were using, and they were absolutely lost, and the kids were kind of blowing through it, and they were doing really well with it. But it was a very hard thing. So then I found a different one, and I found the perfect one, and the kids just adored it. They had a much easier time with it, and they breezed through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just taking time to figure those things out. But then we also did music.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be adaptable and you learn how to be. And I think if you're strong enough as a teacher that you're willing to risk making mistakes and looking the fool and being able to
Mm-hmm.
laugh at yourself, you'll be okay
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to do trial and error. And for
You're going to have to.
a lot of kids in alternative ed, though, to fail is basically to throw yourself into the pit of a volcano. That's
Well,
how they see it.
that if they do it in front of 25 kids,
Well, yeah.
yeah, of which at least 3/4 of them are doing quite fine, and the quarter of them are probably stellar. Yeah, it's really bad
Sometimes,
news.
but then
Yeah,
they learn, you have a strength in this, they don't. They have a
yeah,
strength in this, and you don't.
but that's the measure, that they try to. Well, look at this is how we measure ourselves on
Right.
the 8F scale, and I was just blown away by that whole scale I walked into. There's nothing less than a C. And if this is a D, well, sorry, take it back and try more. I just could never give this kid, this is a D or an F. I just never could slap someone in the face with something like that. And so when that first started teaching there, and that was the C standard, it was like, I'm freed. I don't
Yeah.
have to hurt anybody. I,
Well,
yeah.
a person who gets an F usually hasn't done much of anything.
Yeah, they're wanting to. They're saying, I am just giving you the opportunity to just
Some,
say, do nothing because I'm doing nothing. Let's do nothing together. I'm not going to do nothing with
yeah,
no
it's
one.
usually a challenge. It's
It's a
usually a
challenge.
challenge.
It's a challenge. I don't get
Okay.
challenged.
Okay. So, getting back to everything,
Yeah.
are they trying to kill the morale of the teachers and put them into lockstep so that we just have a colony of drones?
Who would you ask that question of? Yeah, I don't think anybody would say yes, but
But
the
I think
result is there.
it's
I
more of
think.
a rhetorical question, I think.
Yeah, I think right.
Okay. So,
Why do they do that? I mean, I think people want to control the outcome of life. I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people, every student in the school. What would be the outcome? I
well,
often wondered what's the outcome of it all anyway. That of certain,
it's all about control.
even the unit, they would say we're going to do this year, and I always thought, and what would that do? I always kind of wondered what would I be at the end of this process.
Yeah. What are you yeah, what am I supposed to learn?
Yeah.
So, and then I would think that at the end you didn't understand these certain concepts. So, what are we going to do about that?
What,
And
yeah.
and and why do we have to have
Hmm.
why do kids have to retake a class or something? Why can't they just sort of feed into that class until they finish that and then go into, do you understand? And then
Yes,
maybe if they're
I
taking
do.
it again, they get through that stuff and then they can tutor the other kids.
Well, yeah, because it's implying that if they didn't they studied the concepts and then didn't display like a certain use of them,
Hmm.
sometimes that means that there's not a certain level of compliance in a certain understated, subtle way. Like they learned it, but they didn't want to use it.
Are you saying compliance equals proficiency or something along those
Yes,
lines?
I am.
Okay.
It's a sort of a non-stated sort of, but this is the way we want it done, do it this way. And some students were saying, I know it's the way it's done, but I don't want to do it that way,
Hmm.
and I'm not going to do it that way.
Well, then you
And
have an open-ended system of show me
mhm, what
what
other
you
ways?
understand, what you
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah, and that also, then I think you'd have to offer that. What other way do you have to show me that you understand it? And
Hmm.
that is alternative ed, I
Well, that's when they say, I
think.
don't feel like sharing that with you. It's too personal.
Well, the student would say that, but I'd say as an alternative educator, I go, I am more than willing to entertain all and even help you flesh those out,
Hmm.
instead of going, oh, but my way is the only way I want to see. And I think that's kind of the way that some of them are being presented. Oh, we want to just see you do it this way.
Hmm.
And it's like, yeah, but there are many ways to do it. Yeah, but we're doing it this way now. And it's like, wait a minute, my throat's tightening up here. I can't breathe all of a sudden. What's going on here? It just started to strangle me a touch. And then I'd argue, and they go, oh, but you're not going with the program, are you? Oh, it's all coming back to me.
Okay, so how do you believe we should be attaining professional development?
Unfortunately, I think that the whole scale's there, but I would really like to see some innovation along the lines of like collaboration with colleagues, perhaps fleshing out ways of meaningful exploration of the way the mind works.
Yeah.
Um, like there's some fascinating stuff that people read um, that can at least be touched upon.
You mean
Maybe
like a book
even
group?
maybe a book group. I book groups kind of a thing I used to kind of avoid a little bit because I wasn't the structure wasn't there, but I would certainly be into a group that would look into innovating new ways of
Mhm,
looking at that,
mhm,
because I think sharing that information is really important because learning is changing. And and maybe we come up with some really innovative ideas to deal with post-pandemic behavior. Just because we're so close to the kids, they'll give us the answers.
mhm.
Um, yeah, the closer to the ground, just like curriculum, the better
Do you
with
think
professional development.
Why do you think teachers are not encouraged to go to conferences anymore?
I don't know if they ever really were. It was
Here,
because when the money dried up, that's when it just wasn't.
but
There
see,
used to
the
be,
thing is that there is money.
yeah, it used to be more and more. And then I remember
And
there was much more money for it.
I
It
think
was
last
easier.
year, I think last year out of pocket, I spent about $2,000 going to conferences.
Hmm.
But I also spent $1,400 of my professional fund going to those same conferences. And out of pocket, I had to pay for the plane tickets. I had to pay for the hotels.
Yeah.
I had to pay mileage in my car and a few meals. But
Well, a lot of people spend that money on supplies too.
right, right. So, but why don't they encourage teachers to go to conferences? Here's the kicker.
Yeah.
For every conference that an administrator goes to,
Yeah.
there should be 3 teachers who go to a conference. There was an administrator who, and Christy knows the story too. It's too bad she's not with us anymore. Um, this administrator was going to conferences and was talking to a, a team of teachers, and I think it was about 2 or 3 teachers that were involved, and they asked them to get some work done,
Mhm.
some pre-school year work done over the summer, and they said, "Okay, are we being paid for this? We want to make sure." And they said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, you will be paid for it." And then they came in and they had their sheets that the extra hours pay. And the administrator looked at him and said, "You know what? I blew the budget because I ended up going to too many conferences. And so there's no money left to pay you for all the work you did."
Oh,
So it became a union issue, and
yeah.
the district had to cough up. But it's amazing at how many conferences administrators go to,
Hmm.
and none of that, okay, trickles down to
To the
anybody.
students.
I go to conferences and I talk to teachers, I talk to administrators,
Yeah.
but there are so many things that are geared towards policymakers and not towards teachers,
Mm.
and it makes me wonder,
Hmm.
where did teachers get locked out? Now I went to and presented at the National Council of the Teachers of English and the Canadian Council of Teachers of English up
Uh,
in Calgary back in 19, oh Lord, 92.
wow.
I think it was 92. And all these teachers were there. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It really was. There used to be all kinds of, you've been there, the National High School Association.
Yes.
We
Yeah. I
had a
have.
lot of people there. I mean, it was fantastic. And just being able to talk to other teachers and not having to talk to administrators was fantastic. I love talking to administrators because I like getting their takes, but just finding out what other teachers are doing is just amazing to me. And at the national at the National Alternative Education Association last year, I didn't go this year because of medical reasons, but and I heard this year it was absolutely fantastic. Um, I pelled around with some different principals and some state policymakers, and I learned a great deal from them
Hmm.
from different southern states. So you can always get more ideas and you can always find things out because you're all in the same boat. And that's the nice part, the camaraderie. So, how do you believe that? So, how do we want administrators, or what are the demands teachers need to
So,
to have or possess in order to demand decent professional development opportunities?
I wouldn't know.
I think that I think possibly they should put that in their contract.
Yeah, maybe it's hard to get teachers on. Well, yeah, maybe it's difficult to get teachers on the same page sometimes.
It is, but
Yeah,
I think alternative ed, I think teachers in alternative ed are a relatively small group for any kind of district that there are or
should be.
is. And I think that they can put their heads together and they can make some demands because they're the ones that are the experts working with this group of taught. And
Hopefully,
excuse me.
if they have a structure that's close enough. They,
Right.
like,
And
for example, they don't try to include every like counselor from every high school and junior high as special ed. It's like, wait a minute, they're
well,
not really savvy about what,
yeah,
say, special ed needs as a special ed core if they're in
right.
junior highs everywhere.
Let's keep it to
Yeah,
alternative ed teachers
yeah, something
and
like
maybe their
that.
administrator. I mean, it's kind of like a field trip.
Yeah,
But then you can also there's the Q10 conference that's coming up, and that one is virtual.
yeah.
And
You can't
so
network like that though when you're virtual. Sort of.
actually, I did.
Did you get to network virtual?
I got to network because after each one of the sessions, and the nice thing is that after each session,
Yeah.
they record everything and then they put it out there for you to take. So if you didn't make a session, you could always take the recording and watch it.
Ah, okay.
And
That's
so you
nice.
can have like the slideshows, you get to listen to the people and everything like that.
You
And
can do it
so
in your
you can download
pajamas.
them all. But I just remember after this one I think it was after RAFSA,
Uh huh.
reaching at promise students. Um, I believe, and this is a good example. Afterwards, the presenter and three of us stayed after online, and we just talked, and we were asking questions, and we just started gabbing,
Oh,
and it was fantastic. And
about fly
so,
fishing.
no,
Like the Cracker Barrel, the virtual Cracker Barrel. Excuse me.
I guess I've never been.
Sometimes that really happens. It's just you
Yeah,
can click with people online. It's like, wow, I
yeah.
almost don't want to say goodbye.
Oh, it was really kind of
It's
nice,
true.
and I'd see them around other places, and
Hmm.
but I was bouncing from here to here to here, trying to get in
Uh,
touch with other people. But yeah, you're right. It's not. However, it's a heck of a lot cheaper.
yes. Well, and the thing about it is too is sometimes there's a lot to be had at the conferences in the after hours, and I
Yeah.
don't partake of alcohol, and there's a certain air of that people get when they have a few drinks, and I'm being sober, and it's like y'all aren't making any sense anymore to me. That topic just switched really strangely. I'm going home now. It's like weird. It's
Well,
strange. Yeah.
oh, speaking of conferences,
Yeah.
and I know that we have people that listen in from Oregon and Washington and Northern California. If they're interested,
God's country. Oh,
there
sorry.
there will be
Yeah.
an Oregon Alternative Education Conference this spring
I want to
in,
go.
in April. And so if you're interested, email us at educationaltriage at gmail.com, and we'll put you on the list, and we will be sending out a call to a call for presenters. So here pretty soon as well. So hopefully it might be around closer to the first of the year. So we have meetings on that next week and the week after.
Wow. I
So,
want in.
okay. So how should teachers be assessed and evaluated, and by whom? Do you think students should assess and evaluate teachers or have a say in that?
Ugh. Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then how should administrators be assessed or evaluated? Should it be by teachers, students, and other staff members?
I don't think students should assess them
Why?
unless you make the roles of teachers and administrators very clear to the students, like what they should be doing or what their role is. Like, for example, students know that the administrator is a swell person, but do they know what the administrator is supposed to be doing?
Well, I think I would do it as a survey
Possibly something
that
like
asked
that.
very targeted questions.
Yes. Yeah. You could do it. You could flesh it out that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I
I would
don't know
do
how it
that
would be done, but
anonymously. It would be
yeah.
anonymous.
Yeah.
And then
Same
you
thing
have
with the assessments by students
right.
yeah.
Right.
It would have to be fairly done, not a popularity contest. The only reason I'd say that about the administrators is if I was a teenager, I wouldn't really care if you're a teacher or administrator. You're an adult. You're one of them. I'm clueless. I don't care. I don't differentiate sometimes.
I probably would have looked at the administrator and said, "What do you do anyway?"
Yeah, I didn't know I knew that I could get in more trouble if I was caught by them than the teacher is what I knew. So, yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap up. And here's what I want people to know. And that is we will, next week, we have take a look at education and whether or not it really is becoming a business and part of corporate America and following a business model, and or where are we with that? And then we are taking a break for Christmas. We'll be back New Year's. I said that earlier. So, and then we will be operating we'll have a second channel that's going, and that one we are going to be looking at news stories too. So, like I said, if you're interested in the Oregon Association for Alternative Education, go ahead and send me an email, educationaltriage at gmail.com, and we will get right back to you as soon as we know something. I will be collecting those because the more the merrier, right? And if you're interested in presenting something, that would be absolutely fantastic. We would love to have you there. So it will be in Salem, Oregon in April. And, I just want to say, Philip, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This has been yeah, this was a good discussion. Thank you.
It was.
As
yeah,
usual.
I liked it. I liked that. It made me think about good times and the good ideas we had, the laughs that we had coming up with the good ideas.
Yeah. Planning conferences is not easy, but
no.
The amount when you see people come together and the friendships that are forged and the alliances, it's absolutely beautiful. It's incredible. And when it becomes a yearly thing, the thing is that we're making this one affordable, which means that it's going to be well under $150 a person.
Oh, okay, cool.
I believe. And we're setting up a block of hotel rooms it's only a one-day thing, but there are people that are traveling that might want to spend the night.
Yeah.
And I'll probably be spending the night down there too. I don't know. But I looked at one conference and I think it was $699, $799. And it said, we also were doing this virtually. And I thought, oh, hallelujah. I don't have to fly all the way across the country. Same price.
Same price. Yeah.
Same price.
Wow.
And I thought, you lost me.
Yeah.
You lost me. So anyway, so let us know your thoughts. Give us a rating, subscribe, share us with other people, and y'all have it safe out there. We know the weather's getting dicey, especially in some parts of the country. You guys are getting really dumped on with a lot of the white stuff. So Autumn's saying, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day, rest of your week. And until next week, we'll say sayonara.
Aloha.
Bye-bye.